Hello, hello, welcome back to Fire Emblem Legends of Avenir. Romhack by First Lieutenant Noguchi and Snakey 1. I'm your host, Pandan, and this time we are going to do some unit review as well as just like my closing thoughts on the game overall. I'm going to fix this. There we go. That should be a little bit better now. I can't do it because the game ends and then it sends me back to the prologue. I have to go back here. So we're going to look at the units that you get in the Arcane route. What I will say, what's interesting is that I would love to see what a tier list for this game looks like if someone ever made one when it's complete. Because I'm super curious, because there are definitely maps where if you went other paths and certain characters will be more useful. I'd imagine it would be a tremendous mess to make sense of the tier list, but I think it would be a fun activity nonetheless. But first, we're going to talk about the man of the hour. It's Pandan, the tactician character. So he started out as a fighter. You have choices of 3 types of axe users, 2 types of sword users. I said it before, I'll say it again. The game definitely favors the sword users by far. I felt like there were very few reasons for me to go axe fighter at all. You get arc in chapter 1. Assuming you go to protect the village. If you don't, then you get someone else who I don't know what they would be. Maybe they would then be the sword user, and that would have made more sense. Like maybe the axe class is better early game if you become a bandit, and worse if you go the sword route. I don't know, or the sword route, the more noble route, I should say. He started out pretty, he had a rocky first chapter. I think he started to come into his own for a little bit, and then he just stopped proccing speed, and I think that really hurt him. He was still useful. He was still fun to use. He had a ton of HP. He was a bruiser for sure. Not the best unit. Couldn't reliably one round. I would say he definitely kind of leveled off as things went on and stopped being the real standout of the army kind of halfway through the game, which is fine. Like, the Lord doesn't need to be the main, my main go-to guy. But he was certainly underwhelming, and I think considering how poor the performance was of the axe fighter in general, I just think you need to do more to make the fighter a bit more unique. I'll say another thing that was a little bit strange is when I will say that I like the concept of the Lord getting a custom promotion, then I think the unpromoted class should be different, because you have Ark, who's also a fighter, and there's really nothing different about their classes from an aesthetic perspective. And then he gets the option to become warrior or hero, and you get stuck with this sort of berserker warrior hybrid that gets really none of the best qualities of both, which is kind of there's not as much payoff for using this class as say an actual fighter. I would have loved to have gotten Bo's promotion. That would have been cool, or have the option to go berserker or something like that, or the option to do something different, kind of railroading the protagonist, who's going to be the character that the player is most invested in by nature that it's probably their own self-insert. I think there needs to be something to either, one, give the player a choice of what they can do, or make it a little bit more standard. I don't really think it definitely kind of messed with my expectations a little bit, seeing that I could become a warlock, or that I had to become a warlock after being a fighter when my other fighter became hero or warrior. And I get too that it's a short game and this guy's the he's a tactician and all that, and it should be special. I understand that, but definitely threw me off a little bit. Some nomenclature stuff could be done to figure that out, even if it was just using the vanilla axe fighter for the fighter that promotes to warrior and giving the tactician the special, and that could be enough differentiation for me. But just something to consider. Skill wise, his skills were fine. He's totally just try and do as much damage in one hit as possible and don't die, because he's got a lot of hits. So it was fine to use. A little rocky again with the hit rates at the start. Definitely kind of came into his own as things went on, but just not really fast enough to be super effective, but not detrimental either. It's a fine unit. Probably one of the harder tacticians you could pick, just my guess based on what I saw. Ark, I loved this guy. You could see Ark is actually now a little bit better than Pandan in some respects, but he just didn't level up well at all. And he was great. He was fun to use. You know, you gotta love the early game Axe Bro, but he did not level up really well at all, and it made him really tough to use. He's significantly, I think, it's interesting now, like looking at him and looking at Pandan, because like Arc felt way worse in terms of overall performance for most of the game than Pandan did, for sure. I think promoting Arc into the hero really helps him out a little bit. Still not that much. Like even in that last chapter, he was really struggling to do a lot. He was certainly useful, certainly essential for the early game, but in the mid to late game, like, you know, take him or leave him, he was definitely not the best unit I had. With some good level ups though, he could have been really nice. He's fun, good unit, but not as good as he could have been. I don't really think you need to do much to fix him or anything like that. I don't even think he needs to be fixed. I think it's just the nature of the game and the nature of his class and just how things panned out, where he just like wasn't really that great. And I think being the second axe user to my technician also hurt him a little bit. If he was my soul axe dude early on, I think he would have gotten access to certain kills and things like that he otherwise would have gotten. Like he's one of the lower level dudes on my team right now. And that's probably because Pandan was a little bit better suited for a lot of the things that the axe dude would have been best suited for. So he kind of lost out in his niche because I went with the axe tactician and then chose to go to the path to save his village. So that's, you know, my own inadvertent fault, but again, serviceable. Luke was great. His magic growth really sucked, but he was a healer. He did what he needed to do. He was really fast. He could attack when I needed him to. Not as flexible as a unit as I would like, but that's fine. You know, it's kind of difficult when like your healer suddenly becomes your best combat unit. With Luke, that was not the case. He definitely stayed true to his role post-promotion. And even when he was unpromoted, I felt like I wanted him to heal more than I wanted him to attack most of the time. Like, I feel like for every 9 heals, he would have 1 attack round. It was pretty rare, which I like. I think that's important. I think that also speaks to the nature of the difficulty of the game and just how hard the enemies hit and how tough they are, that I want to use my healer every turn, and that I felt like I wanted to have more healers and more flexibility so that I could use Luke on offense in certain situations. But I will say that between him, Val, and Uzklis, they all kind of fell into their own little role. Luke was healing, she was doing summoning. Uzklis was better on offense than both of them, or at least had nothing really else to do besides that, kind of given that he didn't come with a staff or anything like that to help alleviate. I could have traded something to him, but Luke was a little bit better suited for the healing role, and he was better suited for the attacking role. So different uses for these guys. I think it's a good way to make 2 guys that can appear to be in the same class have very different uses and feel like very different units. I mean, Luke was still really good. Definitely a fun unit. Would want to use him again. Elenil, I think she was probably the best unit of the run. In all honesty, in Noguchi, I saw you say this as well, that like the Altian soldiers really carried me, and I think that's true. Elenil was a player phase monster. She was one running a lot of stuff. She was dismantling things that were difficult that I didn't want to hit me. She was able to really just take away any threat that was on the board at any particular point in time, or weaken it so that someone else could. Post-promotion, getting swords, that was really useful in that first chapter. I didn't really go to the sword too much. And these other ones, just being able to attack at range, ignoring the weapon triangle, setting up kills for some of my other slower dudes that can't double. She was really good at that. Really fun unit to use. I think I just got lucky. I don't think she needs like a nerf too hard, especially I think like not having a good enemy phase until she remotes is enough of a punishment in itself. And she's not super, you know, she's strong, but she's not really, she's a little glassy. Like she doesn't have the best HP, she doesn't have great defenses. She's decent at avoid, but like she died. She can certainly die, but that doesn't make her a great unit. So, but that does not make her a great unit. She was still really good despite that. So I had fun using her. I would certainly go Ranger again just to get some of the 1-2 back into it and the mount, but I'm sure Sniper would have been fun as well. Yeah, she was good. Val was like, she's a little slow, I gotta say. Like her stats, you know, definitely kind of show that. She's slow. She hits pretty hard when she first joins. She's definitely like, she feels like your typical shaman. Slow, you got to be careful, you have to position her well. You have to make sure that she's not really going to get attacked by anything that uses a physical weapon on enemy phase. So you have to make sure that she's kind of like leading a lot of your attacks. I think that made it a little bit harder for her to get experience in some cases, because I always wanted her to kind of lead the charge, do a big trip, and then surround or make a wall so that she wouldn't get attacked, which I think hurt her in situations unless there was a clean up for her. Summoning was so helpful too in those later chapters as well. Like summoning is just such a powerful thing. And unless you really know or can guarantee that the player is going to have summoning available to them, it's really hard to make it fair. I mean, I still died with summons, but it definitely helps. It just allows the player to move faster and a little bit more recklessly with their position, because they know the enemy will not go for their weakest unit. They'll just go for this, like, you know, a phantom. You know, they were striking it air, right, Heinz? So Val was pretty useful, if only for that. Helmer, I was told Sentinel was the better promotion for Helmer. I don't think it wouldn't have mattered that much given how late I promoted anyway. I don't think having him with low rank swords or axes would have made a huge difference. He was useful, he was good. The last chapter I kind of struggled to find a place for him in some spots. Finoke was just better with the Brave Lance, and I needed that a couple times towards the end there. So I felt like he kind of played towards the back seat a little bit at the end, but he was really useful. I probably should have used him more. I don't think I gave him enough credit throughout, but like those are some really strong offensive parameters, and I probably should have paid a little bit closer attention to what he could have done. But this game was not really very friendly to Lance users. I felt like it was harder for him to find like spots to really go in and lead. I felt like he was at triangle disadvantage quite a bit, or neutral, and I didn't feel like he was bulky enough to kind of warrant putting in those situations. Great in situations where he has an advantage, shaky otherwise, strong offensive unit. I liked using him. Not really too much else to say to that. I don't feel like I got enough. I feel like I could have gotten more out of him if I paid a little bit closer attention. Finoke, yeah, Finoke was really good. Having the flower utility, was great. Tons of movement. He was strong. He was fast enough to double in a lot of cases, even though speed doesn't look that high comparatively. Like, he's just at that threshold where he can double most things. He's great with the Brave Lance. He was hitting super hard. Rescue drop strats. I don't know. I liked this guy. He was fun to use. I think he was strong but not unbeatable. Definitely, you know, a really solid flyer. I think really just like, if you want to point to the example, like, how do you show the strengths of a Wyvern Lord without making them broken? I think Finoke is a pretty textbook example of how you do that. I probably could have, I mean, Helmer, like, just look at their parameters. Like, Helmer's got 6 points of speeds on him, but it didn't really matter all that much. Helmer's got more res, didn't really matter that much. Helmer looks a lot better on paper, but Finoke just is a bit more flexible than he was, and that made a big difference. So overall, Finoke was a really good unit. Uzkalis, you only get him for a chapter. He was great. He was able to one-round some of the things, which was nice. Rally Spectrum's really broken. Definitely helps add just like a lot of extra oomph to him. Flexible unit for the last chapter. Not really too much else to say on him. As a character, like, I think he's kind of inconsistently written. You know, he's kind of edgy, then he's like really nice. He's really like, I think he just cares. He worships I don't want to say he worships the tactician, because that's kind of severe language, but he certainly takes Pandan and the group very, very seriously. Like, way more serious than I think someone in his position should. But I also don't have full context into how buff of an army he actually has. Like, it just seems sort of odd that he would, this guy who's ruling a country and like trying to fight a war, would like have his personal troop essentially be a bunch of mercenaries and just kind of trust them to do like some really mission critical shit. So that was kind of interesting. A little bit of a stretch overall, but as a unit, totally fine, no complaints. So that's it. This is kind of short because I don't have that many units. But as far as my maps go, I did sit and think about this for a little bit, which maps I like the most, what I would change. I would say, map-wise, I'll say it again, the maps are very linear. I want some more multiple pathing in my maps. I think that'll just help make it a little bit more exciting, kind of encourage different styles of play on each chapter. Well, inevitably each chapter will be a little bit different depending on the units that you pick and the tactician that you pick and things like that. The nature of every map is kind of played essentially the same. Like, I can go back and replay this final chapter. I don't really know how I would do it very differently, except making like minor tweaks here and there on positioning or using certain items in different scenarios and things like that, but not like, let me just send these guys this way and these other guys that way, right? And kind of changing how I go about approaching it from a macro standpoint. It's hard to do, not only with this last chapter, but with a lot of the chapters in this hack. My favorite one, Let's see. The chapter where... I'm trying to think what it was. Because it's tough, because they're all like kind of melding into my memory, and it has been a while since I played some of the earlier ones. I did like the chapter where you fight the bandit guys in the fortress, and there are the guardians that arise, and they have like all the different types of weapons, and there's that chest room there, and there's the reinforcements that come from behind. I liked that one. That one felt a little bit more hectic. I felt like I had to rush a little bit more than in some of the other ones. That one was pretty fun. I would say it's certainly one of the stronger maps that I can recall. The first chapter really was tough. You know, I was having really bad RNG, so I don't really blame the chapter. But it was just, you just had low hit rates. A lot of the chapters, or a lot of instances in different chapters, felt very RNG heavy. Whether it was like trying to avoid a wrath crit from a sentinel, or whether it was getting a nice hit with one of my axe bros. Like, it was definitely a bit more RNG heavy than it should have been. I admittedly did have really shit RNG for most of the run. And like all this coin flip, a lot of coin flip situations where it mattered, I was on the wrong side of it, unfortunately. But that's just how it goes. You know, these are risks that I volunteered for in some cases, even though maybe in some situations they might not have necessarily needed to be seen as quote-unquote risks. But the maps were fine. I think if you just make them a little bit less linear, that could help. That second chapter, I felt ended just a little too quickly as well. I would definitely go back and like make it so it's a little bit easier to get to the boss, given just, again, if you go Axe Tactician, you're not hitting things as reliably. You gotta bake in a few extra turns to make that a little bit better. But otherwise, yeah, this was really fun. I would say that this is definitely one of the most innovative things that I've played. And it's a shame because I feel like, I don't want to say it's a shame, but like a lot of the most innovative stuff that's happening in the project, I think is really in the realm of how you actually play the game and in the story and in this writing, and less so in the gameplay itself. I think there were a lot of really nice edits to the gameplay, like all the different tomes you can use and the magic items. I think the enemies were really tough and well equipped in general, which I really like. I think it's easy to just kind of make the enemies a bit of a snooze fest. Like, I had to think because every enemy had something different that could really screw with me if I didn't approach it the right way. So definitely had to micromanage a little bit more on specific turns, which I like. I think that just makes the game better. It keeps me respecting the enemies a little bit. So I like that element of it quite a lot. Stronger enemies are nice. This game was chock full of pretty solid enemies. I would just try and make it a little bit less RNG heavy. Like, if I am in like kind of a toss-up situation, like I feel like there were a lot of crits on enemies, and especially like later in maps, like that can really bork you. I would definitely shift a lot of the crit heavy stuff earlier in the chapter, so that this way, if like you have to reset because of an unlucky crit, it's not like you're resetting the whole chapter, you're replaying only like a turn or two, which I think is a little bit more palatable if you want to do high crit stuff. But otherwise, the other stuff that I'll say is that the edits to the skill system are really welcome addition. I'll say it again, the skills being nerfed a little bit, being a little bit more palatable, just makes them so much easier to use. I would love it if like these were the standard ones, honestly, instead of like what you get out of the kit, because there's so many other projects that just like slap shit on all over the place, and it's like it gets a little out of hand with just how big some of the numbers are. And like I experienced this firsthand with VQ, just seeing how big some of those numbers got when I was using certain skills, and having these more subdued ones more broadly I think would be great. So that's another really nice innovation that this hack does, is it takes the skill system and manipulates it in such a way that it suits the numbers better. But let's see. Yeah, overall, I mean, I definitely want to go and play more. Like, that much for sure. I want to go try a different tactician out. I want to take a different path. I'll certainly be replaying this on the channel once the other ones are further along, to try out the proper military and the magic paths when those are out, and see kind of how those go. And maybe I'll play some of the other ones off screen just to get a feel for some of them and see what they're like. But yeah, this has been fun. I want to thank again Snakey1 and First Noguchi for making this. A lot of really great progress. This hack is getting a lot of attention, and it should. I think gameplay is a really big opportunity for you guys to make this better. I think if you nail the gameplay, then I think you'll have a very complete package when it's all done. Because the writing's at a point where it could be trimmed down a little bit. and be a little bit less exposition-y, and it would be fine. The gameplay, I think, if you make some tweaks to the RNG-ish nature of it, if you make the maps a little bit less linear and a little bit bigger in some cases, or just have a little bit more going on in them, fewer instances where I can turtle. I guess really more anti-turtle incentives would help a lot. I think you'd have a really fun, compelling experience, and I think given the nature of it, it kind of has an old school sort of feel where you want to replay and replay and replay and replay, and like think of like an old like Super Mario, as NES game where you have these like really short levels and you want to just like keep playing and optimizing even if you die. I think this hack can kind of embody that concept a little bit more by making some more incentives to rush the player and make them maybe overextend themselves and die that way versus getting unlucky with a crit. And that can be achieved by some nice anti-turtle incentives if you can figure out how to make them work on these different maps. But anyway, I've rambled for quite a bit. I do like this project. I think this was fun. Definitely want to play some more, and looking forward to see where things go. So follow their Discord, guys. Snakey and Noguchi are always happy to chat. I'm always happy to chat too. And I look forward to continuing on with whatever's next. I'm going to get into Souls of the Forest soon. That's Scry's hack. I'm looking forward to playing that when it's different. And we'll see how it goes. Thanks again, guys, for watching. My name is Pandan. This is my cursor. Probably was in this video the whole time. Excuse me. And I will see you later. Take care. Have a good one.